Hello everyone, it is Professor Oleander again. I am once more back from the dead, with good reason this time, and I'll explain here as we get into this. So I did a video a couple weeks ago. It was on the game Wolfpack, and which is a submarine game. The video was too dark. I did a night attack, and despite what I tried to do, I couldn't salvage it, so that didn't come out. Some other stuff have gotten some other stuff has come up since then. Talk about it here in a second, but I figured today I had some time. I wanted to do a game that we're all familiar with, everybody on this channel knows about, and it's Run 8, which just had another update. So this world is actually, it's not really got any trains running on it, so I figured this would be a perfect time to start everything up, so to speak. So that's what we're going to do, is I'm going to see if I can bring up the external dispatcher. For whatever reason, it's not wanting me to, not letting me show up external dispatcher. Either way, I can show you on the real dispatcher screen. You can see everything is empty. All the trains are sitting in yards. I've turned the auto dispatcher on, and we're gonna wake everything up. So one by one, I'll start assigning crews to the train and let somebody else handle the dispatching for a change. So while we're doing that, let me go ahead and get into my train, because I'm gonna get out first, because technically I own this railroad. Let's see, what is the tone? It's been a while since I played this game. Let's see. Well, I can do it in here so that way everybody can see. What is the tone for Barstow? Mm, 32 and 13. And we wait. There we go. Requesting a yard departure. This train, what is my symbol? Bar pass. High priority. I didn't even look to see what we're hauling. Proceed on signal indication. What on earth are we hauling today? Like a bunch of hoppers, some boxcars, and some tanks. I think there is one unit on the rear. And we're lined out, so let's go. Let's see. I gotta remember how to do all this, so bear with me. Not how to operate a train, how to run the simulator. Realize I already let the gonna move. There we go. Independent's not releasing. There we go. Apparently I had a little bit of an application on. So, what has been going on? It's been a lot, in all honesty. Where do I even begin? So I do not work for the railroad anymore. I left my job in December, about mid-December of last year. I ended up leaving. The reasons are varied. As a lot of you know, I didn't have any free time at all for the most part. So I needed to be home more, and by home I mean back in my home state, in my hometown. I needed to be there for family, and I just did not have the flexibility that I needed with the railroad. So I ended up leaving. It was my choice, and you know, left on as good of terms as I could. It was a pretty substantial pay cut to come home, but all things considered, with what's happened over the last 6 months or so, it's been worth it. Just not that I wanted to share it, but we've had some stuff that's happened in my family. It was fortunate that I ended up coming back when I did, because in April my father got diagnosed with leukemia. He's undergoing treatments right now. The outlook is, you know, the doctors have a pretty good hope that they're getting it under control. He's been responding fairly well to it, so we'll just have to kind of wait and see. There we go. That's why I didn't have the screen set. So we're just kind of waiting and seeing what's going to happen with all that. It's a bit nerve-wracking. There's stuff with him. I had an exam to get a certification that I needed for work that I was stressing about. I actually passed that. That was not this past Thursday, but the last Thursday. So that's out of the way. I don't have to take another one until the end of the year. Till next year. So I was stressed out about that. There was just other stuff. You know, the money situation's always on everybody's mind. I took a pretty substantial pay cut to come home and be there for my family, and it's been a heavy weight on me. Don't really want to go much more into personal life, but there is someone that is very close to me that's been having a hard time as well, and I've been trying to be there for them, to support them, and it's just been a lot in a very short amount of time has happened. So that's where we are. As far as making videos in the future, I want to. Sometimes it's finding time, sometimes it's finding quiet time in the house to do it, where there's not a lot of stuff in the background and I don't have to worry about being interrupted and my phone's not blowing up because 10 million things have just happened. You know, trying to do it, we'll just have to see what happens. So I said I did a video on Wolfpack. That one's not going to come out because it's just too dark. You can't see anything that's going on in the periscope. You can see the game fine, but when you're trying to go view through the periscope, the views are just too dark, which is really weird, because the original video is actually fine, but whenever I go into Vegas Pro and I try and edit it, it turns out darker, and I've tried lightening it up and it doesn't turn out right, and it washes out everything else, and it's just a really big pain in the butt to try and fix it, so I'm just gonna have to redo it. Among the other things that I've been wanting to do, Kerbal Space Program 2. Now, to be fair, I really have not played with it much, the reason being because it's in a pretty rough state right now. They've patched it once, kind of okay. There's still a lot of stuff. I was expecting they were probably going to have it a little bit better state than what it got released in, but you know, it didn't really, it's not there. There's another game that I'm actually going to attempt to make some videos on, and that's Railroads Online. I actually have a friend that wanted to get into it, so we might be able to do some like multiplayer stuff in the future. I've played around with that a little bit on the beta branch, and that game is kind of interesting the way that they've got it set up, but I think the original devs may have kind of bitten off more than they could chew. And I don't want to even say that, but there's a new team that's on it now. They seem to have a little bit better grasp on what to do with it, so it seems like the game's heading in a good direction. What was another one that I've been playing? See, there was, what did I say, Kerbal Space Program 2, and then there was Railroads Online. I've been wanting to do some videos on like Battle Cry of Freedom and War of Rights. I've been pretty vocal about, not in videos, but in like the communities, about I'm not terribly happy with the way that War of Rights has gone, the direction that it's gone. I've sat down and I've watched a couple matches, and I think part of it is it's the gameplay seems a little bit on the frustrating side to me, in terms of how it plays and whatnot. It seems like the game is more dictated. The gameplay is more dictated by the clock than it is by the tactics and whatnot. But you know, it is what it is. I watched a match afterwards, and it was a public match, so take that for what it's worth. It's not as bad. They actually just released another major update, which I still have not had a chance to play it. They did a polish pass on Artillery, which I was glad, because Artillery always felt like it got rushed into the game. I have my opinions on the way that Artillery's been implemented in the game. I know that they're going to have horses in game, but Artillery is just, it's too much right now. It just it feels like it's just, the gameplay is not there for the way that Artillery has been implemented. Let me put it that way. The guns are too close to the battle. There's just way too much that it can do. And the same could be said for Battle Cry of Freedom. Artillery can be very OP in Battle Cry of Freedom if someone is playing it that knows what they're doing. I mean, I've made shots. I've played the commander battles, which I think are fun. A lot of people are not happy with them because they're like, well, that's not what this is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a first-person shooter. And it's like, well, yeah, but you got to have the people to play, and you still can do that. The commander battles makes it so that it's a lot more tactical, and it actually feels like these massive battles are going on, because you can get, 1,000 bots on the screen and you're commanding them. And that's kind of, that's where Mountain Blade kind of got its start from, was that sort of thing. Think Bannerlord and stuff like that. That's basically what that is in Battle Cry of Freedom. And I've enjoyed it. But like I said, Artillery in Battle Cry of Freedom, I've taken shots where I've knocked out 15 or 20 bots in one go, and it's just because the commander's not really paying attention to how he's facing. He's, you have to move a lot. You can't just sit there and stand still. You have to move. So it's been interesting to play. And then they just added cavalry too, which is cavalry is good and bad in that game. There's going to be a fine balance for cavalry going forward with it, and the same thing with War of Rights, because their plan is to put cavalry into the game, and it is a fine balance. So what else we got? What else have I actually played? I'm trying to think. was that. There were those two. Oh, Star Citizen. So I've never really talked about Star Citizen on here. I've been a backer of that game since I think 2014. And if I seem distracted, I'm actually recrewing some of these trains. That way we get some traffic moving. I remember when it was first able to be played. I'm trying to think back now when it was, like 2016 or something like that. It was pretty rough. There were a huge amount of bugs. There's still a lot of bugs in it, but it's a lot more playable now than it was a couple of years ago. Because I remember I rage quit that game I don't know how many times just because it was unplayable. You know, you'd have like this bug that would just blow your ship up for no reason, which that still happens, but not to the extent that it does now. I have my own opinions about it too. I think the developers, and I'll throw his name out there, Chris Roberts, who is the guy that came up with this, that came up with the whole concept of it. He kind of bit off more than he could chew with it. It suffers very much from feature creep, and you know, because of that, they're always going to be behind the 8 ball because, you know, there's, oh Lord, how many? There's like 12, 15 ships that are in the build queue for it, capital ships, and the devs came out, you know, I think it was last week, or maybe it was the week before, and they said their plan was to release them at a rate of about 1 to 2 a year, and they just sold the big carrier one, which is the Kraken, for $1,600. And it was a limited quantity, so it was 100% for sales figures, and they sold out, of course. But that game is not going to be in the, I'm sorry, that ship won't be in the game for at least, you know, 6 years or something like that. Because they've said that the RSI ships are going to be in there before the Kraken or anything else gets in, and there's other ships that are in front of it. And honestly, they're not going to need it until the game gets big enough for it. And that's the other thing, is that for as long as the game's been out, it's been very small. It's been, you know, the ships that are in game now are probably about the ideal size for the system, the size that it is now, and the stations the size they are now, and plus everything that's in the game to do. When we get into like capital ships and stuff like that, you're going to need way more players, you're going to need more infrastructure, and right now they're just not there. They've been struggling to get the second system put in now for a while. There's some other stuff that they've been really struggling to get in, and then the server stability has been just abysmal for the past 2 weeks. So, you know, it's going to take them some time. I feel like they're going to get it, but man, it's been 10 years, and I feel like they've got at least 10 more in them before they get to the point where, you know, the game has enough stuff to call it a beta. I mean, 10 years in alpha, that's a long time. Trying to think of how long War of Rights has been in alpha. It's been 6 years, I think. I believe 6 years. But yeah, there's a lot of games that I want to play. This is a horn pack that I found online, by the way. I think pretty sure it's K5. I don't think if there's any other games that I wanted to go through. I want to do the tutorial on Wolfpack because I think that's a game that is worth mentioning. There's another sub simulator, Crush Depth, which I want to get. The reason why I was a supporter on his Patreon for a little bit, because of I was interested in the game, but he wants $60, and it's still right now it's just a tech demo, and that's just a lot to shell out for something that's a tech demo. And I couldn't see spending the money for it. So the other one, I just remembered now, I have said for a long time that I was going to do the Smokebox Big Boy, and I still intend to do it. And he's released the Challenger now in the, in the amount of time that it's taken me to get to it. So I will probably do one of those sometime here in the near future. One of the reasons that's been keeping me from it is I really do not want to give Dovetail Games any more money. As much as I hate to say it, I love what Smokebox has been able to do with those engines, but man, I am just not happy with Dovetail. Just because I feel like everything they do is a freaking cash grab. A cash grab. The little pincer's got little changes in it. But yeah, it just feels like everything that they do is just money, 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 money. It's always a half-assed produced thing. They don't deliver on what they promised. I remember when Train Sim World, well, you guys saw the video. When Train Sim World came out, it was supposed to have all this stuff, and it ran like crap because of trees, because they did something weird with the trees. Everybody was getting like 10 or 15 FPS. And then, they were talking about they were a simulator, and you look at the train handling, and it's like the whole freaking thing had training wheels on it. The worlds were empty. There was no route editor. You couldn't add trains. You couldn't do anything except what was pre-baked into the game. And to me, that was just stupid, because the game felt like it had half the content in it that it should have, and all they've been doing is just making more and more and more and more. And yeah, I mean, it's sad. So it is what it is, and I'll give the money to Dovetail just so I can do the one on the Big Boy and the Challenger. I'm more familiar with the Big Boy than I am the Challenger, because I had a chance to do a partial cosmetic on one of the Big Boys, so I've seen bits and bobs of it, and UP did a lot of stuff that was interchangeable with other engines and whatnot. I'm looking here on the dispatcher screen. I'm trying to find my train there where I am. I believe not yet. So that's pretty much what I have planned. Whether or not we get that done, that's a whole different story. On the other side of things, I'm happy with the decisions that I made. Everything's kind of worked out. It's like I said, it's just getting time to do stuff. So I can't really think of anything else. I didn't want to make this video too long, and I think I've gone about 20 some minutes. We'll go about 30 and then call it good. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I want to make videos on. At some point I do want to go back and do Swords Filmmaker stuff on the other channel. It's just those can be a little time consuming. You know, it's always kind of rough. Trying to get the inspiration for what I want to do. I do want to make some more poster making tutorials. Stuff like that. I may try and make some videos. I don't know. But I do know that one's on the radar as far as what I want to do. Let's see, what else can I think of? It's funny because the dispatcher screen is showing that was a red and it was a green over a red, which is a green. But I'm looking at my external dispatcher here, and it actually looks like it has me lined silt. That I'm square for about another 30 miles or something like that. I was actually going to do a Run 8 video here not too terribly long ago, but it's just one of those things where I've kind of tried to stay away from trains just because it was just, it's like I wanted a break from them. But you know, another clear ahead of us. Yeah, I'm trying to think. So if there's anything, if anybody can think of anything that they want to see or whatever, put it in the comments, and I'll at least take it under consideration as far as that goes. And I'm trying to think if there's any more games, because I know I played. There was a stretch for a while that I played nothing but Battle Cry of Freedom for a good bit. I've actually been playing Star Citizen more than I've been playing anything else, because it's actually been playable, and it's been a game that I've been like waiting for years and years and years and years. I tell you what, we're actually getting ready to come up to a defect detector, and I've got a new defect detector pack for this, so we'll play until we hear that. I can't even remember where I got them from, but it's a detector pack that changes all of the readouts and everything. I just wish there was more to do, but this is, you know, this is the hard part of working for the railroad, is sitting here and mashing the buttons and making the thing do the thing. Of course, nowadays it's even easier because, you know, they have things like they have Trip Optimizer and PTC and all the other bells and whistles, which basically, you know, on here it would show you what your signal stack is in front of you. Basically you put the thing in notch 8, and then it does the rest of it. It figures up what your most efficient speed is. You know, it has the route already programmed into it, and it's basically speeding you up and slowing you down based off of all these variables. And you know, it's like flying a plane now. You basically put in where you're going, and then it gets you there. You're there in case there's a problem. That's sort of where we are with trains now. I guess we probably should touch on the East Palestine derailment, because that one was, I mean, it was pretty bad. I'm not gonna throw on my tinfoil hat or anything like that and play the inspector and that sort of thing. I do remember right after it happened, some of the guys that I work with, they asked me about it, and I said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well," I said the worst part of the derailment came from the emergency application. You know, the engineer was in Dynamics, and obviously when the derailment happened, the the engine is like trying to stop as fast as it can, and everything else is off the track, and then there's nothing to slow it down. So I said that's what really caused the worst part of it. He did the right thing. I'm not saying he didn't. I'm just saying that's why it was such a big mess, is because the train separated, the engine, can't remember if he was already in dynamics or not, but I'm like, the engine slowed way down, and then once everything went off the track, it was like there was so much of the train behind him that came off the rails, there was like nothing to slow it down, and it just all accordions up. It's a very bad accident. I don't necessarily agree with the NTSB, and you know, was it preventable? Yeah. Of course, the report hasn't come out. We don't know how old that bearing was, or maybe they have and I haven't seen. Maybe they do know how old it is and I haven't seen it. But you know, they had the hot box detectors. It was within the thresholds when it went through 2 of them. When it went through the last one, that was the one that got them. It was too late. So, you know, it's so funny, you know. If it had been earlier in the day and people would have seen the train moving, because I think there was one video of it when it was going through. It was on a security cam. You could see sparks coming out from underneath the car, and I have to think if there had been people on the road that would have seen that, somebody would have been calling 911 or something, saying, "Hey, there's a train on fire." You know, and I'm not saying that it would have helped. Could have potentially. You know, my PSA for everybody, especially if you're any sort of train enthusiast, find out what the emergency contact numbers are for the railroads that are near you, and if you see something, then report it. If you see something like something that's going to hurt somebody or potentially cause a bad disaster, just call them up and tell them what it is. If you know where the train's going, if you know what unit it was, just tell them where you are, which way the train's moving, and then they'll go from there. It'd probably be quicker to call them than it would be to call 911, because then they got to get a hold of the railroad and all that other stuff. But somebody actually sent me a video the other day of another hot box, and I mean, this one, the bearing was orange. I mean, it was glowing orange. I think most of the wheel was orange too, and I'm like, man, that is. I think there was actually a derailment not long after that. I believe it was on CSX. I'm like, yeah, man, it's just, a bearing can just go bad. Seen it happen. They can just go bad. And there's really not a lot you can do about it. Yeah. It's just, it's sad. But, you know, like I was telling the guys that I work with, I was like, if you knew the condition of half the cars that were operating on the railroads, I said, you'd never leave your house. I'm like, it's just like everything else. They get abused. A lot of those cars are getting towards the end of life. They get abused. They get knocked to hell around. I mean, if you've been standing up on a hill whenever a train's cresting over and it goes into dynamics, it is violent. It's just violent, the amount of, you know, intertrain forces that goes through those couplers. It sounds like a freaking bomb going off sometimes. It just happens. Components, they get old. Sometimes even the newer stuff, there's just something wrong with it. Something's just a little bit out of tolerance. It's enough to pass the QA, but then it fails. You know, that whole derailment up there. That's why I said I don't 100% agree with the NTSB, because they came out and they said this was all preventable. It's 100% preventable. It's like, well, yeah, it would have been preventable if they'd had. The only way that it could have been preventable, let me put it this way, is if the second detector, if their threshold for thermal problem had been lower. But as far as I know, they were going by the manufacturer's recommended They said, do not go over this threshold. Now, I could be wrong, but, you know, as far as I remember, I think there was a variable. It was like 60 or 50 degrees between the two defect detectors. Don't exactly remember. It's been a bit since I looked through there and read about it. I mean, the only way that I could see it being preventative if they had said, you know, if there is a variance between two readings that's more than about 40 or 50 degrees, you probably ought to stop and check. But the thing that everybody forgets is it was cold that night, and you know, the bearings are going to warm up. Or maybe it was 50 degrees over ambient or something like that. Either way, like I said, I just don't agree with that it was 100% preventable, because I've had that, you know, it's been shoved down people's throat for so long, for so many years. It's like every accident is 100% preventable, and I'm like, sometimes it is just an act of God. Sometimes things just happen. Been there, seen it. I used to get asked at work.
DNSS detector milepost 766.0.
I used to get asked at work a lot about what was the risk assessment for a failure of a part. I was like, what do you mean? And they said, well, what's your risk assessment as far as something gonna fail? I said, that's not how this works. I said, what do you mean? I said, it either fails or it doesn't. I said, there are some things that I can look at and tell you, yeah, that's probably getting ready to fail here within the next couple of weeks, months, minutes. But I'm like, 90% of the time, I said, from my experience, from my expertise, it can look good, it can test good, and it'll die tomorrow. That's how it works. Been there, done that. It will work flawlessly, not have any problems. You come back the next day, it falls apart. Seen it happen. Seen it happen on brand new equipment. You know, work today, don't tomorrow. As a matter of fact, we've been going through that at work. We just replaced a part, brand new, out of the box. Ran it. It was fine. It was fine when we shut it off. Came back, I think it was about a week later, went to start it up, nothing. Dead. Would not do anything. And that was like the second time we'd had to replace it. Because the first time the part was pretty old. The second time, I think it was still a used one.
Detector milepost 766.0. No defects. Repeat, no defects. Total axle 484. Train speed 48 mph. Ambient temperature 97 degrees. Out.
There you go. There's a new repeater. So all I'm gonna say, and I'm gonna leave with this statement, is, you know what hits the fan? Things break. Things that were good today are not tomorrow. That's just my opinion, and you know what opinions are like. So with that being said, I may do another video on Run 8 before I do anything else. And I'll do one where I'm actually talking about railroad stuff instead of rambling on about everything. I just wanted to get everybody caught up on what's been going on, and then we'll go onward into bigger and better things. So with that being said, I bid you all a good night.